Hello and welcome to World News Tonight, coming to you live from Warsaw, Poland, with me, Anna Kalczyńska. Good evening. The case of granting asylum to Marcin Romanowski will probably not be the last, said Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán. The prosecutor's office has brought 11 charges against the former Polish Deputy Minister of Justice, including participation in an organized criminal group. More on this in just a moment, but first, the headlines. The detained suspect in the Magdeburg attack is a critic of Islam and a fervent supporter of AfD. Donald Trump wants NATO countries to spend more on defense. At the Polish National Opera, concert rehearsals are well underway before Warsaw takes over the EU presidency. He may be the first, but most likely not the last. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has doubled down on granting political asylum to politicians suspected of committing crimes in the EU. Orbán's comment comes amidst an unprecedented diplomatic dispute between Warsaw and Budapest. Kazimierz Łysiak reports.
It's another day and another provocative comment by Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán.
Without revealing too much, I can tell you that the political asylum for Marcin Romanowski is not the last one of its kind.
Orbán's Polish counterpart, Donald Tusk, was not amused by the Hungarian leader's words on Saturday.
Prime Minister Orbán does not like reckonings. He told me this directly when explaining the decision on asylum. Politics is simpler than some people think.
Poland's former Deputy Justice Minister Marcin Romanowski has turned up in Hungary after being accused by the state prosecution of embezzling more than 51 million euros of public funds. Politicians from Poland's ruling coalition are outraged by Hungary sheltering a fugitive suspect.
This situation is unprecedented. That's why the Polish Foreign Ministry decided to summon the Hungarian ambassador for an explanation and recall the Polish ambassador from Budapest for consultations.
But no one is really surprised by Viktor Orbán going against the current in the EU.
Let's keep in mind that Viktor Orbán is a man who spoke with Vladimir Putin just a few days ago. His policies are de facto in line with Putin's policies.
Earlier this week, Hungary blocked EU sanctions on Georgian pro-Russian officials who were involved in brutal police crackdowns on protesters. According to one expert, such moves only add to Budapest's black sheep reputation in the bloc.
There's a personal animosity between Viktor Orbán and the European Commission. We know that the European Commission and many top European diplomats have been boycotting the Hungarian EU presidency over the past half a year.
And now Poland will be taking over the rotating presidency in the Council of the European Union, starting in January 2025. Following 6 months of Hungarian leadership, there are high expectations in the EU that Warsaw will breathe new life into the works of the Council.
A man who killed 5 people and injured more than 200 has been arrested by the police. On Friday evening, he drove a car that plowed into a crowd at a Christmas market in the German city of Magdeburg. After it turned out the attack was carried out by a Saudi national, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk urged his political opponents to support his restrictive migration policy. Piotr Miszczuk reports.
The 50-year-old perpetrator is reportedly a Saudi doctor who has lived in Germany since 2006. Back in 2016, he filed for asylum in the country as he felt threatened by Saudi Arabia and Islam. In Germany, he worked as a psychiatrist and recently became radicalized. German newspaper Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung suggested the perpetrator had a radical anti-Islamic stance, but German politicians cautioned against jumping to conclusions.
We have to understand the perpetrator, his actions and his motives in order to be able to respond with criminal and, if necessary, other consequences.
The attack prompted a response from Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, who used the situation to remind his political opponents in the country of his migration scheme.
After the attack in Magdeburg, I expect a clear statement from President Duda and the Law and Justice Party today on their support for the government's package to tighten visa and asylum laws. The state is regaining control over borders and migration after years of chaos and corruption, so at least do not interfere.
The most widely commented point of Tusk's policy was the temporary suspension of the right to asylum for migrants, which many human rights organizations protested against. But what Tusk has proposed is seen by some experts as an attempt to salvage the wobbling Schengen zone, as well as a call for a unified migration policy that would encompass the whole of Europe.
In order to keep it alive, I think we should change something, because we should have a common agreement between countries in order to have the policy that allows for more control on the outside borders and in fact to control the inflows of migrants on the borders.
Polish opposition MP Witold Tumanowicz from the far-right Confederation Party has lambasted Angela Merkel for her open-door policy, which he says brought about the tragedy.
It has almost become a tradition, a bloody tradition, that there are all sorts of attacks during Christmas markets in the West.
In 2016, Germany's capital Berlin also saw a Christmas market attack, which killed 12 people. The Friday events have raised questions over the feeling of safety among people in other parts of Europe. But at a Christmas market in Warsaw, people don't feel threatened in any way.
This morning, it didn't scare us enough not to come and enjoy at least a little bit of this Christmas atmosphere. I have seen that today there are police standing in front of the entrance of the Christmas market. Also, I think it will help.
The Christmas market attack in Magdeburg has sent shockwaves across the world. Billionaire and Donald Trump's staunch supporter Elon Musk took to X to call Scholz an incompetent fool. While the motives of the perpetrator of the attack in Magdeburg remain unclear, German outlet Der Spiegel reported that the Saudi national was a sympathizer of the far-right group AfD, which Musk had endorsed.
The traditional political parties in Germany have utterly failed the people. AfD is the only hope for Germany.
But experts say the problem is that different parts of Europe are facing different challenges.
The Southern Europe experienced a huge immigration from Northern Africa. In Germany, we have many immigrants that are not very well integrated in the society. The same probably in France. And in Poland, we have migration from Ukraine, immigration from Belarus.
The terrorist attack in Magdeburg has fueled the growing anti-migration sentiment across Europe. But as many experts believe, the tragic events will largely set the tone for the political campaign leading up to the snap federal election scheduled for late February.
Russian forces bombed an oncology clinic in Kherson in an overnight missile and drone attack, drawing fierce condemnation from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. It was yet another Russian attack on Ukrainian medical facilities. Our Ukraine correspondent Oz Katerji joins us now live from Kyiv with the latest. Good evening, Oz. What more do we know about this attack?
Well, we heard from President Volodymyr Zelensky in the morning that 110 drones had been launched by Russia onto Ukrainian territory and that civilian buildings, residential buildings, have been struck in Kharkiv and Zaporizhia, but the striking of yet another medical facility in Ukraine has drew the most fury from President Zelensky, with this oncology clinic being hit in Kherson. Let's take a listen to what he had to say earlier in his nightly address to the Ukrainian people.
The dismantling of the debris and rubble removal in Kyiv after yesterday's missile attack was completed today. Work has also been ongoing in Kherson throughout the day after Russian bombs hit an oncology clinic. Fortunately, there were no casualties. People were in the shelter, patients and medical staff. This dispensary operated on a limited basis during the war, using only the equipment that could not be moved from Kherson to other hospitals in the region.
So there were injuries earlier on in these attacks throughout the day. However, fortunately, no fatalities in the attack on Kherson. Now, Zelensky went on to call this attack a mockery of people that Russia has been doing, perpetrating on the Ukrainian people by continuously attacking medical targets. Zelensky would go on to talk about the difficult state that Ukraine has been in this week, with 550 aerial bombs launched by Russia, 550 drones, and 20 missiles ballistic of various types used against Ukraine just in the last 7 days alone. So again, President Zelensky is insisting on further support in the field of air defense from his international partners as these winter months kick on.
Oz Katerji, thank you very much, Oz, for the latest. US President-elect Donald Trump is raising the bar for the NATO members, expecting them to spend more on defense. Recognizing the need to take security more seriously, European leaders are gathering in Finland today for a summit with defense and border security high on their agenda. Marek still has more.
With Donald Trump set to be sworn in as president in less than a month, European countries may soon have to spend much more on their militaries.
President Trump believes that European countries should meet their NATO defense spending commitments and increase their share of the burden of this conflict, the war in Ukraine, because the United States has paid much more, which is not fair to our taxpayers.
The statement came after the Financial Times reported that Trump may want to raise the current 2% of GDP threshold to as much as 5%. This, however, has not been confirmed by his press secretary.
I don't see 5%. I think that's completely unrealistic right now. 3% has been a number that some people have been floating around, and I think in the June summit, that may be the new target. Frankly, it should be the new target. Given the situation in Europe, the largest war since World War II, the Europeans should be spending more.
Among NATO members, Poland and Estonia are the only nations that are expected to reach 5% defense spending next year. This year, Warsaw exceeds 4%, and Tallinn follows with nearly 3.5%. Defense and security are being discussed in Finland's far north region of Lapland. The North-South Summit is gathering leaders from both northern Sweden and Finland, as well as Italy and Greece.
We know that we need to commit more resources to our collective defense. The question is, how are we going to achieve these goals at a time of increased geopolitical turbulence?
Donald Trump's other demand that Europe ramp up support for Kyiv is already being fulfilled. Once all commitments arrive, Europe will have donated twice as much aid to Ukraine as the US.
For anyone to think that President Trump is going to hand over American interests to any of our enemies and the common enemies of the United States, Ukraine, and the free world, including Poland, they're woefully mistaken.
According to the Financial Times and contrary to previous reports, Trump's administration will continue to support Ukraine militarily after he takes office.
A Houthi missile-triggered air raid sirens across central Israel in the middle of the night, sending civilians to shelters. This marks the second such attack in as many days, heightening tensions in the region. Let's go live now to our correspondent Diana Skaya, who is in Tel Aviv. Diana, good evening. Walk us through, please, what happened last night. This is the second time in the same week that a missile from Yemen has failed to be intercepted, right?
That's right, Anya. I mean, we heard sirens here at 3:45 in the morning. You can just imagine how people are really waking up, trying to understand what is going on. And the way it works is that the closer you hear the siren to where you're located means the closer the chances are that it's either going to, the missile or the rocket will either explode next to you, the debris will fall nearby where you are, or it will be intercepted next to you. And now many people, of course, try to ignore that and stay home and don't go to shelters. And what they see happening is like we did last night when they actually crashed into some of the buildings there in Jaffa in southern Tel Aviv, now causing 14 people to have injuries, 16 really wounded. Many people taken to hospital. However, they were discharged earlier this morning. Of course, the Houthis from Yemen claimed they were responsible for the attack of what they call a surface-to-surface missile, which they named the Palestine 2 missile. saying to what they call targeting occupied Jaffa here in Israel. Now, of course, what we do know is that Iran is the one that seems to be testing these missiles, and the Israeli defenses are still saying and still conducting investigations how they were able to fail to intercept these missiles coming in from Yemen. Anya?
Diana Skaya from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Diana. Take good care. And now to a huge environmental disaster in the Black Sea. The sinking of 2 Russian tankers has led to the spilling of thousands of tons of oil products. Local residents are reporting worsening air quality, while environmentalists are documenting the mass disaster for animals. More in the report by Anastasia Yanchenko.
2 tankers carrying 9 tons of fuel oil sank in the Kerch Strait, resulting in the spillage of some 4,000 tons of oil products. One of the tankers split in 2, killing 1 crew member, while the other ran aground.
Why am I calling this a major disaster? Because almost 40% of the fuel has already leaked. It's obvious. The scale of the damage is unprecedented.
According to the Russian Ministry of Emergency Situations, the oil slick now spans 54 kilometers of coastline.
I can't imagine the scale of this disaster. I have never seen anything like this before. Nature will suffer for many years to come.
Over 6,000 rescuers and volunteers are involved in the cleanup operation. They are working to clear the coastline and rescue birds and animals affected by the oil spill.
We decided to focus on saving birds, as they are among the most severely affected by the oil spill.
Birds are being caught along the shoreline, cleaned of oil, and provided with the necessary medical care.
About 500 birds have already been brought to the center. Unfortunately, more than 30 of them were not saved. We find them on the shore. They are completely covered in oil. We catch them with burlap, put them in special bags, and take them to a center for cleaning.
The disaster occurred in an area that provides critical habitat for seabirds and dolphins. Among the worst affected locations is Anapa, a popular Russian tourist resort. The captains of both tankers have been detained. They are accused of violating maritime safety regulations.
According to the investigation, the captains failed to take the necessary action to shelter their ships in a safe location and time.
Environmentalists warn that the situation in the Black Sea is worsening by the day, as oil continues to leak from the sunken tankers. The final extent of the pollution remains unknown.
And the Polish presidency of the Council of the EU will begin with a unique event on January 3rd. The Polish National Opera, which, by the way, is next door to our television building, will host an official gala featuring a concert by contemporary composer Radzimir Dębski, known as Jimek, to showcase both the richness of Poland's cultural heritage and its modern, innovative edge. Our reporter, TVP World, Aisha Abache, visited the orchestra's rehearsal and has more details on the upcoming gala.
We are here at the Polish National Opera. This is the rehearsal for the celebratory concert that will be held on the 3rd of January.
Warsaw is certainly aiming to make a statement with its opening act when taking over the presidency of the Council of the EU. We didn't witness the rehearsal of a classic Chopin recital, but rather an orchestra inspired by Poland's traditional musical heritage, reimagined with a modern twist.
Since during our presidency, we want to show new perspective on looking on security, on migration, on different issues. Also through the culture, we wanted to show new perspective. And on the concert, on the 3rd of January, you will listen to the parts of music which were composed by traditional Polish composers, but now they are arranged in a very modern way by Radzimir Dębski.
The Polish composer will perform a selection of his pre-existing compositions, as well as one he wrote especially for the occasion.
I've written a new piece for 160 people. I'm paying an homage to my favorite Polish composers. I have a personal favorite here that I would like to talk about in the whole world. the greatest female composer of all time, Grażyna Bacewicz, who is an incredible musician, like a hidden gem, somebody that a lot of people don't appreciate enough, I feel.
During World War II and the post-war Soviet period, Bacewicz created music that reflected Polish identity, blending folk traditions with modern and innovative styles to express national pride, quite fitting with Poland's recent message.
Since we have the security as a main theme of our presidency, to feel safe, we need a dialogue. And there's no better way for a dialogue than music, than culture.
I think we're just athletes representing our country. I like to think of it like that. And we're trying to represent our country the best we can. That's our main focus and mission.
The opening gala will also be a moment for the Polish capital to host its European family.
Before the concert, we will listen to the speeches of Prime Minister Donald Tusk and speech of Antonio Costa. They will show the way for the European Union for the next 5 years and for Polish presidencies.
The opening of the Polish presidency of the Council of the EU will definitely be a big bang. The celebratory concert will be on January 3rd and EU leaders will be in for a treat. Reporting for TVP World, Aisha Bajo.
And we're going back to our main topic. Marcin Romanowski, the former Deputy Justice Minister, granted asylum in Hungary. Maybe the first, but certainly not the last politician to seek political refuge in the arms of Viktor Orbán. The Hungarian Prime Minister announced, not without satisfaction, that he's not going to execute the arrest warrant issued by the Polish prosecutor's office. To discuss Viktor Orbán's stance and his quite openly hostile attitude towards the Polish government, I'm joined now by Piotr Kaczyński, EU expert from the Gala Foundation. Good evening, Piotr.
Good evening.
Good to have you. So Romanowski faces 11 charges as Polish prosecutors accused him of being involved in an organized crime group, using crime as a source of income, abusing his power while serving as deputy minister. Now, we hear from Orbán that it is Tusk's government that considers Hungarians to be enemies. And our goal is to keep the conflict with Poland at a reasonable level. For the first time, we heard conflict today. So what's the real point of Viktor Orbán?
This is power play, power struggle between Orbán and the world outside. He seems to think that there's Trump coming into the office and then he can be as assertive as he used to be in the past. Until November, he was not so assertive. Even when he went to Moscow or Kyiv or Beijing earlier in this year, he wasn't so assertive as right now. This clearly constitutes a big question mark about the future of Hungary in the European Union.
Exactly, and especially that, during his presidency, the Hungarian presidency, we've seen certain animosity between Hungarian government and authorities and the European Commission. We also we've seen EU politics boycotting many venues organized by Hungarian presidency. So the tensions are rising, right? So what's the alternative? Is it going to be the legal law?
It's going to be legal and politics. It's both, because it's two strong men out there. Orbán is trying his strengths against a person who's the strongest politician out there in the European Council, Donald Tusk. Tusk right now, with the very weak German government that just collapsed, we have unstable situation in France. We do not know how strong Meloni truly is, because the trust towards the government in Rome is also, let's put it this way, a bit restrained. Tusk is the biggest star right now in the European Council. And look, Tusk versus Orbán. Clearly, Tusk has much more power than Orbán has. So this is attack against Tusk by Mr. Orbán, and let's see what will be happening here. But this is the first time that we are seeing asylum refugee status for somebody who is an EU citizen in another EU member state.
So this one is a precedent.
It is a precedent.
All right, so what's going to happen? Because clearly this situation doesn't help Polish presidency. Just as it starts, it faces a major burden on the political side. So who comes out weakened in this situation, Hungary or Poland, would you say?
Who is weakened is definitely So we will see who's weakened. EU is weakened by this very conflict within the family, so to speak, because Orbán and Tusk should be able to deal with this situation normally. We are talking about a criminal charges against a person. If you talk about law, it should be down to the Hungarian justice system to provide an answer whether this person should be or should not be sent back to Poland, depending on whether those 11 crimes are also punishable in Hungary.
Well, we just heard Viktor Orbán saying that they have thoroughly examined all those criminal charges, and on basis of that, they granted this asylum. So we may just...
But it's up for the judge to do this, not for the Prime Minister.
So the judges have 40 days. Can you imagine, possibly, that the Hungarian judges will somehow find themselves strong enough to oppose Viktor Orbán, saying that it's not the first case? There are going to be numerous next ones.
Yes and no, because it is over 1 month, and 1 month in politics is a lot of time. So we'll see. There's 20 January in between, and we'll see how independent the Hungarian judiciary truly is. I'm not going to say yes or no. This is an EU member state. It's a serious member state. There's a big investments going on into Hungary. It's not that people are not considering Hungary a democratic state, after all. It has autocratic tendencies, but it doesn't mean that it's not Russia, for example, where Putin controls clearly everything. Here, Hungary, let's wait and see what's going to happen. Mr. Orbán is a strong man in Budapest, but whether he will deliver truly independent judgment by a judge in this country, open question.
To be seen. All right. Now, we've heard Polish officials saying that they're going to take this case to the European Court of Justice, so it will basically take a lot of time, far more than the Polish presidency, as we can imagine. But how this case will affect the situation in the European Union, in Europe?
It's problematic because Hungary using right now this asylum request or approving it, because if he was just asking for it, it's another question. But if they have granted the asylum status for Mr. Romanowski, then it's a precedent in which we don't know exactly where we are. The Polish government says that Hungarian government should react positively. They are breaking the law, Article 259 of the treaties. According to my judgment, they are breaking even more. They are breaking the being a loyal partner with other member states. And this is what was, this is a problem when UK was leaving the EU, the loyal partnership with other countries in the European Union.
So would that be maybe an argument for Hungary exit?
I wouldn't call it a Hungarian exit, but we are much closer today to using the tools that are there in the treaties, especially as regards the Article 7 of the EU treaties, which talk about suspension of certain rights of a certain country, and in this case, Hungary. There were 2 cases like this launched in recent years against Poland and Hungary. Against Poland has been terminated, and the one against Hungary has been on hold because you need a unity of 26 others. But now such an anti-Polish statement that Orbán did, I believe there's more countries that were somewhere sitting on the line between Hungary and the rest of the club right now are moving towards the Polish camp rather than a Hungarian one, including the Slovak one.
So that would strengthen the Polish position. We've seen also many situations in the Council of European Union, especially the foreign one, where basically Hungary alongside Slovakia are blocking important measures. So do you imagine that this somehow can be also altered?
This is on the line here with Trump. This is what we'll see after 20th of January. Hungary did not deliver. I mean, they are finishing their presidency with one of the biggest failures out there. They did not prolong Russian sanctions that were prolonged. They were there since 2014, every 6 months, prolongation. December 2024, no prolongation. So this is a big failure for Hungary. But Orbán has said it quite publicly. All depends on what Mr. Trump will do.
Interesting days ahead of us. Thank you very much. Piotr Kaczyński, EU expert, Geremek Foundation, was our guest tonight. And that concludes this edition of Main News. Thank you very much for watching, and please stay tuned to TVP World for more news and more comments to come.